growth projected next year to be nil, politicians are looking to find ways to solve this issue. One of the ways is through science and technology, a potential growth area for the United Kingdom. Last week, I headed along to a scientific superpower conference in Westminster to explore the ways in which the UK could harness science to grow. Government says it wants the United Kingdom to become a scientific superpower. Well, how can it go about doing that? What policies does it need to adopt to unleash the potential of the scientific sector in the United Kingdom? Well, I've come to this conference here at the QE2 Centre in the heart of Westminster to speak to some of the experts who know how to do just that.
Is that the government can't ignore regions and clusters like the Oxford-Cambridge Arc and the Golden Triangle if we're going to achieve levelling up across the country. Our estimates from Bidwells showed that the Arc has the potential to add £235 billion to the UK economy by 2030. And I think we're going to need that capital if we're going to drive levelling up. And we're also going to need the life sciences space, the laboratory space, across clusters like the Oxford-Cambridge Arc if companies are going to scale up and create the kind of unicorns we've seen across the US.
So the Oxford-Cambridge Arc as a project could create a new sort of Silicon Valley in the United Kingdom?
I think that's exactly right. And while I'm wary to make direct comparisons, I think that if we're going to achieve some of the really precocious growth we've seen in the US and in clusters like Silicon Valley, but also in Boston and Massachusetts, we're going to need real investment into the Oxford-Cambridge Arc, and it needs to be high up on the government's agenda.
What do you say to those who say that the government pouring more money into areas around London, into the southeast, into those well-to-do cities in the first place, that might harm other regions of the country?
Well, the Oxford-Cambridge Arc is going to be a real engine for growth for the UK economy. And while levelling up and the levelling up agenda is really important, we're not going to be able to do it if the UK economy doesn't grow by 2030.
All these different industries here today are talking to each other. Do you think they all understand that it's that sort of cooperation that's needed?
I think we've seen a real change. Originally, there used to be property folks and scientific folks, and there wasn't that closeness. And I've really seen a change over the last, particularly the last 5 years of understanding the occupier or the customer and their needs. And that's really exciting to see that today. You can hear the buzz in the room. And I'm so proud of the way the industry has changed and taken those changes on board. I think the government, has really put a lot of money behind science. And, it's one of the leading assets for the UK. What we've got to do better is translate that science. We're third in the world for innovation, but we're 13th in the world for scaling that up. And I think that's our next phase of growth. And government's looking at that. We're only a small island, really, but it's connecting it and just doing a few things well and spending in the right place to drive that growth. Well, what is it that makes a cluster grow? Well, when I look at clusters, I always think of the whole innovation supply chain, right from the academic or even commercial researcher base. They do the blue sky research, the what if, the innovation. The little startups, the entrepreneurs, take that innovation and they turn it into early stage products. And then you need to put them next together with the bigger companies who understand how to get things out to market and the manufacturing piece. So you bring all of those together, and that makes a cluster. And then what I do is I wrap around it a really supportive environment. And that's, we start off there with access to facilities. Little companies have no time and no money, so for them to get access to shared equipment and flexible space that they can grow with them, because their people are their assets and they need to be able to move to flexible, bigger space. So there's the technical aspects, then it's all about skills and talent pool. The second thing we always put in is training. Now that can be formal training, accelerator programs, all sorts of skills training. But also I find the informal, where it's just mentoring or networking. I run a little CEOs club, and the mature CEOs, they help the little ones come through because nobody's got all the answers right at the beginning. And then the last piece I put in is also finance, getting the right type of finance at the right time. So for the early stage companies, maybe it's grants, maybe it's they always say fools, friends and family, you get your money early on, but you need that continuum all the way up. So you need to understand all the different investors, what they're looking for to take you through that journey right the way up to public offerings and so on. So it's getting those aspects together in one cluster that really drives innovation and the results for the UK.
investing into regions like the Oxford-Cambridge Arc is not at odds with the levelling up agenda. It's actually a supportive part, because if you have areas that are very innovative and that they're creating growth opportunities, you get spillover effects into the rest of the UK. That might be through collaboration with universities outside of the Oxford-Cambridge Arc area. It might be about establishing manufacturing capability in different parts of the UK. We need to make sure that the government really reprioritises the Oxford-Cambridge Arc and sees it as part of the holistic solution to growth and not something that's at odds with some of their other policy agendas.
Well, there's a spill-on effect as it goes out. So then these companies there'll be knock-on jobs as they grow and expand. Manufacturing jobs will come forward, and that's how the kind of New England whole ecosystem has been driven out of Harvard and MIT as it rolls out. I really think the biggest challenge is just thinking big. You know, having government and developers and the life science sector to think big and to push the envelope and to take risks. That's the biggest challenge that I've seen.
Now, what is an architect doing here at a scientific superpower conference?
Because architecture is important to deliver a scientific superpower. You need great spaces and great places to attract the talent. Creating a scientific superpower, it's not easy, I guess. It's complex. So you need to get all the different areas and the different expertise aligned towards the same goal.
Well, the UK has always been a world-leading nation in terms of science and engineering. But what I think we're seeing now is that we're going through a proper root and branch, complete rebalancing of how the UK economy functions and operates globally with its friends internationally. And that's now rooted in our great science and engineering, but it's also rippling out into high-value advanced manufacturing. There's an economic reality, which is we are going into a moment of difficulty because of all the money that's been printed, frankly. You know, a lot of asset prices have gone up simply by virtue of the fact that more than 20% of the total US dollar stock at the moment was printed in the last 30 months. So there is a reality that there is some over-exuberance in some sectors. But I'm a great optimist in as much as we do have this incredible foundation of science and engineering expertise. We're completely capable in the UK, a small island, at actually joining the dots between talented communities such that they function collaboratively and mutually support each other and go harder and faster. And we are winning, and we are number one in a series of sectors already, and we can continue to do that. So government has a challenge, because government wants to have a long-term policy strategy, but also butts up against, on a regular basis, the realities of a short-term by-election pressure. And the democratic difficulty that we have perhaps not explained to the population of the UK, that what we are at this conference discussing is how we can improve the socio-economic health position of our children and all the people that live in the UK now. And most of the things that we're doing now are very definitely for people. They're not being done to or at people. But I do sympathise with the government, because whilst we're all consistently frustrated that perhaps long-term strategic policy gets sort of blown off course, shall we say, by short-term political expediency, it is very difficult to do. And I think we nationally, as a culture, need to be a bit more accepting of the fact that there will be some painful moments and some communities will not feel entirely delighted. But for the good of the greater whole and the future of the next generation, there are some extraordinary opportunities that we can now grasp. I'm hugely optimistic. I think we've got an incredible opportunity. We're a small, focused, very highly skilled nation, and we already have extraordinary credentials. The Oxford COVID vaccine is just one example. We're leading in the space industry in small and medium-sized satellites. We're leading in fusion energy. There are a series of sectors where the UK is very definitely it's almost sort of peerless in terms of its capabilities, and we need to double down on those areas and actually carry on growing.
Now, I'm here with Tiago, who's a research robot here at the conference, and he can move around. He can even shake people's hands, as I did a little bit earlier with Tiago. We get along very, very well. But he can also speak, and we've agreed that Tiago's going to sign off this little segment for us today. So, do you know what? Take it away, Tiago.
Goodbye. You have been watching The Briefing with Tom Harwood and me, Tiago, on GB News.
Well, there we go. There was Tiago the robot. That was a really fascinating conference there.